If we're being honest, many of you watching right now would not be alive today if not for that medical technology. People love to say the good old days were better. But if you think medieval peasants, Roman slaves, or even your own childhood in the 90s were perfect, you're forgetting something. Reality. You've probably seen the TikTok and Instagram reels that are showing cozy 80s bedrooms, mall food courts from the 90s, grainy family VHS tapes. And the philosophical gamer has made the claim that medieval peasants, Egyptian slaves, and Roman slaves had it better than Gen Z workers because they didn't have to work as much, in his words. So he was going on about how medieval peasants got the entire winter off because there was really no work to be done. There was no. There were a bunch of religious holidays as well, which I doubt because when it comes to farming, they would have had to make sure that they were working to make sure they had enough food. Like, what if there was an emergency or something? I don't know. I wasn't a medieval peasant. I'm not particularly knowledgeable on how farming works, so I'm probably not the best choice for talking about that. But I can safely guess that there are that the philosophical gamer is exaggerating this very wildly. And what I'd really like to know is whether the philosophical gamer is willing to say the same thing about American slaves up until 1865. Philosophical gamer, if you're watching this, I dare you to say that and see what happens. Let's be clear, slavery was wrong in every civilization that practiced it. No exceptions. It's just one of the most insane cases of mental gymnastics I have ever seen. Yes, maybe they had a better work structure, comparatively speaking, but they had to do it to survive. Really, survival is always a part of the human experience, or having to compete in some form. But before I talk more about this, don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoy it. Comment what do you think about romanticizing the past, whether you are getting those warm, cozy feelings seeing those short form videos out there. Me personally, I do enjoy looking back on the past to some extent, or enjoying a movie or show from the past, or in the case of The 40-Year-Old Virgin, feeling nostalgia for the time that I was a child, except in a movie that came out at the time that I was too young to watch, and weirdly, I have nostalgia for the setting. Don't forget to give this video a like as well, and subscribe for daily videos of cultural commentary from a man caught between generation. Oh, and don't forget to join the Zillennial Nexus Point Discord at the link in the comments down below. Anyway, getting back to the main points, people are really craving the social cohesion, not the time period that they miss. Humans long for community, shared experiences, and a sense of belonging, things that can get lost in a hyper-individualistic, screen-heavy world. Though, again, the technology itself is value neutral. The problem is we're all choosing to use the screens the way that we're using it. As I've said, The same phone that I use to order a mobile order pickup of groceries can also be used to facilitate cheating. I said that in a comment for a Dapper Dev video. I think a better way to put it is the same phone that can be used to connect to romantic interests can also be used to facilitate cheating. So you see, it's all value neutral. The thing for the past is that nostalgia just smooths over the ugly parts and magnifies the warm feelings. Because the harsh reality is, what happens if you actually go back in time is you lose your leisure technology, so no internet to watch this video or any other YouTube video. There aren't any video games if you go back far enough, and there is no streaming. You only have low picture quality cassette tapes, and then you have physical media, which has its ups and downs, but ultimately, if that disc is scratched, you're fucked. Beyond just leisure things, there are more serious concerns for if you were to actually go back in time, like legalized discrimination. Yes, believe it or not, there was a time when race and gender based discrimination was perfectly legal in many eras that people romanticize. So if you're thinking about if you were to have the DeLorean and you went back to the 50s or 60s, yes, objectively speaking, there was racial discrimination and gender based discrimination as well that was perfectly legal in many parts of the US, or at least there was no federal protection with the Civil Rights Act and all that. I don't know the specifics of places beyond where the Jim Crow laws were instituted in the South, but I can safely guess that there were no federal protections. I'll say that much. And then for something that affects literally everyone, medical limitations. The medical technology was not where it is now. Think about it. If you go back to the time of the founding of America, or even back to the Old West, like if you went Back to the Future's Part 3's 1885, God, I'm surprised that Doc Brown lasted as long as he did, because realistically speaking, if you were to transplant someone from the 1980s and move them back to the 1880s, a small cut could literally end you because of the lack of antibiotics. That wasn't brought up in the movie. In the movie, it was mostly just the water was filthy, the drinking water, that is. They didn't have water treatment or filtration or anything like that. Yeah, Back to the Future Part 3 got that part right. It just forgot to take into account the lack of antibiotics and that a small cut could be the end of your life. Or if you look at Civil War battles, like in movies and shows, it was brutal. They literally had to amputate limbs in situations where we wouldn't need to do that today. And then beyond that, there are no prescription meds, or they aren't as good as they are now. Chronic conditions were basically death sentences in the past. So if you had high blood pressure problems, you couldn't get the blood pressure medication because it didn't exist, you were screwed. Although there is the argument that there wasn't the high salt, ultra processed food that contributes to high blood pressure, but that's a topic for another day. But yeah, without the prescription meds, chronic conditions, whether it's that or anything else that you can think of, they were death sentences. There's no easy way to say that. And then don't even get me started on the lack of advanced surgery or life-saving tech, which, if we're being honest, many of you watching right now would not be alive today if not for that medical technology. I probably wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for such medical technology. Yeah, not only is the reason that people are living longer being due to medical technology, more people make it past birth because of more advanced medical technology. Oh, and then on top of that, many diseases that barely exist today were deadly and common. Like, for example, polio used to be a thing. Thanks to vaccinations, polio does not exist anymore. And because of more sanitary conditions, you basically have to try to get something like an infection from a small cut, or you have to track down something like bubonic plague in an actual rat. Well, depending on how bad your living conditions are, one might show up at some point anyway. But generally speaking, you have to go out of your way to find that kind of thing. Yeah, believe it or not, quality of life wasn't just simpler back then. It was riskier in more ways than we can count. I could probably go on all day about that. I'm trying to think of other things from Back to the Future Part 3 that emphasize it. I already mentioned the tap water. Oh, going back further, I learned in 12th grade English class the reason that medieval Europe, or Britain, I think. Yeah, it was when we were reading Beowulf. My teacher explained that they had to drink beer because the water was full of bad bacteria that modern water treatment facilities and water filters you can buy at the store are able to filter out. But that's not to say past is all bad. We can and should take lessons from history without pretending everything was better. The medieval peasant work structure, for example, was less of a year-round grind, I will admit, but there was more seasonal rest. Of course, it was facilitated by the weather, which in modern offices, there are heating and air conditioning, retail and food service. Most places are open every single day that aren't Christmas Day and Thanksgiving Day. Well, except for movie theaters, those are open every single day, barring a state of emergency. But yeah, maybe if there was a way that we could make that kind of structure work out. You let me know in the comments down below if you think that would make sense. Personally, I would not be completely against that, but also I can acknowledge that was really only because of the weather. Whereas today, we don't have to worry about that. Most jobs aren't like that anyway. And then there's social cohesion, tight-knit communities, and shared rituals. Yeah, we still have that to some extent, just a little less so, and I admit I am guilty of breaking the social cohesion to some extent because there's a parade every year that my town has that I have not attended since 2019. Because 2020, they didn't have it. I'll give you one guess why. 2021, I think they were unable to plan it during that time for whatever reason. As a member of 2022, the traffic in relation to that was something that was being talked about at the instant gratification job because I had work that day. 2023, my friends and I went to see a movie that day, one that my friend regretted and said that he wished he'd gone to that parade instead. And then in 2024 and 5, I just didn't attend. So yeah, you could say I am guilty of ruining the social cohesion because I'm not going out to those things. I mean, I'm glad that it's not like, say, the Empire Day parade from Star Wars Rebels, where everyone was pretty much forced to attend at Blaster Point. As real world, what's the most YouTube friendly term to put this? As real world authoritarian governments have a tendency to do, they tend to not give you the option to stay home if there's some kind of state celebration or something like that. Really, I think the problem is that no one feels like they're worth attending. And again, I am guilty of contributing to this problem. You let me know in the comments down below if you try to go to something like that and what you think of all that. Anyway, medieval peasant work structure and social cohesion are things we should try to take from history without taking the negative parts, but not at the cost of losing modern medicine, equality protections, or personal freedoms. So, social cohesion, again, I think people should be free to choose not to attend something like the parade I just talked about if they don't want to. And I think there should be more vacation time, or it should be able to be more spread out. Like, I agree, 2 weeks in a year, that's not as much as it could be. We still gotta factor in the long weekends with the days off, like from the start of the year to the end of the year. New Year's Day. Again, this is assuming an office 9 to 5 job. Retail and food service are a different story. Hey, you got the weekends, New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, which I heard used to be Washington's birthday and Lincoln's birthday, both for a period of time. The 4th of July, Labor Day. Oh, I forgot Juneteenth. It's a more recent one, is all. But yeah, Juneteenth is now a day that people get off, assuming it's not a retail or food service job or something else that would require working that particular day, or anything that requires holidays and weekends in general. After Labor Day, there's the federal holiday on the second Monday of October. You call it whatever you decide you want to call it. And then there's Veterans Day, and then the big ones, Thanksgiving and Christmas. I would not be against more holidays, but I also understand that maybe the work is actually necessary. I don't know. Office Space kind of demonstrates the reality that it's mostly busy work. But you let me know in the comments down below if I'm wrong. Anyway, the point is, wage slavery is still better than literal slavery, because you can technically leave. Like, you can choose a different form to an extent. And if you're not able to work, or if you have a temporary holdover situation, or if you get laid off or fired, I think more likely laid off, there's still government assistance, which isn't perfect, and the situation of which kind of changes depending on who's in office. But either way, it still exists as a temporary holdover, which is what I think it ought to be. And it's all assuming you don't have anyone to move in with. Like if you don't have the option to live at home, or if you don't have anyone to turn to, I think government assistance can be a good thing. But romanticizing slavery era life is both historically ignorant and morally wrong. And again, one of the dumbest takes I've ever heard. I just wanted to talk about how all this romanticizing of the past is kind of ignoring the dark sides that we should address. And I want to acknowledge that yes, it is valid to want parts of it that were good, because the past wasn't perfect, and neither is the present. But if we can cherry pick the best parts of history and combine them with the technology, medicine, freedoms we have now, we can make the future the real good old days. Or we can make the future the actual happy days. You know what? I just had an idea. A remake of Happy Days, but it's set in the future, and it shows how we were able to combine the best parts of the past with the technologies of the future. Well, of course, Star Trek, the original series, did something similar where it showed an optimistic look at the future with the United Federation of Planets, space travel, and all that. Go watch Star Trek, the original series. Yes, some of the visuals look a little cheesy because they're amplified to a higher resolution than the production ever intended. But you know what? It's still a great show. Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up here for the video. You let me know in the comments what's one thing from the past you think we should bring back, and one thing we should leave buried. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for daily videos of cultural commentary from a man caught between generations. And last but certainly not least, feel free to join me at the Zillennial Nexus Point Discord. Link is in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.